Mhm. That's great. Well, it's 9 o'clock Madison time. Good morning and good afternoon if you are in another time zone. And it's really a pleasure to welcome you all to our Global Health Tuesday webinar series. And today's discussion is going to be about women leadership and global health. I'm Jorge Osorio. I'm the director of the Global Health Institute, and I'm really delighted to welcome all of you and our distinguished panelists to what I know will be a really great discussion about global health and women and leadership. So our Global Health Tuesday series features researchers and practitioners from the University of Wisconsin-Madison and across the world. The speakers showcase the complexity of global health challenges and demand many kinds of expertise that are needed to address them. By sharing their experiences with the campus and Madison communities, these guests provide insight into global health, encourage conversation, and help connect colleagues locally and globally. Our moderator for today, for this morning's panel is Lori DiPrete, and Lori is the Director for Global Health and Human Ecology and distinguished teaching faculty at UW-Madison School of Human Ecology. Lori is also the director of the 4W, which is Women, Wellbeing in Wisconsin and the World Initiative, where she focuses her scholarship and practice on global health, particularly the health of and well-being of women and children in highly vulnerable situations around the world. Lori is also an affiliate of UW's African Studies Program and Latin American, Caribbean, and Ibero-American Studies Program. She's the lead author and editor of Foundations for Global Health Practice, which is a text that articulates a broad vision for global health and includes topics such as human rights, global mental health, water and sanitation, food systems, climate change, and urban health. She also has served as GHI former associate director, and now Lori is an advisor in our transition team, and it's great leadership that she's providing for GHI. So please help me to welcome Lori, and who will introduce our panelists. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Good morning, and thank you for being here. Both you are here, who are here with us this morning, and you who may be watching this on video in the future. Women's leadership in global health is important, and it's become a movement in recent years. Arguably, you could say it started with a Twitter shout-out campaign by Dr. Ilana Kickbush. She wanted women who've done so much in global health to be recognized, to be visible. Her call for 100 names quickly became 300, and we all realized that this recognition that came from outside of institutional hierarchies was real and needed, and we embarked on further efforts to study the challenges and form communities of response. Since then, many of us have participated in women in global health events and actions as speakers, mentors, and researchers. The focus so far has been women's leadership in the health professions and health systems, organized by Women in Global Health. And I'll be putting that link in the chat for you to follow that organization after my remarks. The Midwest chapter of Women in Global Health, with its seat at Washington University, has wonderful leadership in Dr. Kayleen Matter and Dr. Jacaranda van Reenen. And UW-Madison Global Health Institute and the 4W Initiative have been proud and active partners in that regional network. While this Women in Global Health movement has been deeply mindful of the need for whole of society approaches, today's lecture builds on the conversation that's already been happening in new ways. The new ways are deeply aligned with notions of One Health, planetary health, and the Sustainable Development Goals. Today, we're featuring women leaders from a range of professions outside of healthcare professionals who are contributing in huge ways to global health, locally and globally. While we mind the gap in gender equity day to day, and so much more must be done, today we're celebrating women's leadership. We're going to hear what three women, Mrs. Suchitra Ella, Dr. Jessica Price, and Dr. Zewdie, have accomplished in spite of, and sometimes because of, gender biases that still persist in the global health sector and related institutions that we deeply care about and support. They have excelled in their work, and they have been sisters, per-sisters, and even resisters at times. They will also share leadership insights for all of us and offer words of guidance to the UW-Madison Global Health Institute as it looks toward a new phase of expanding research and bringing Wisconsin to the world as a partner for health. So let me tell you about our panel. We will begin with remarks from Mrs. Suchitra Ella. She's the managing director of Bharat Biotech, which she co-founded with Dr. Ella in 1996. With experience in customer operations, finance, marketing, and business development, Mrs. Ella is a pillar of support and guidance at Bharat. She's also the chairperson of the Southern Region and Indian Women Network. She serves on boards of ISB Well-Wishers Trust and United Way Hyderabad, an international charity partner focused on social empowerment in local communities, livelihoods, health, and education. She strongly believes in corporate citizenship and social responsibility and has spearheaded the CSR initiatives of the company, which is a huge motor for change around the world in the private sector. She holds a BA in economics and social sciences from the University of Madras. She followed this up with diplomas in business development from University of Wisconsin, real estate management from University of South Carolina, as well as a postgraduate diploma in patent law from Nalsar, Hyderabad. We are so proud that she wears red, and several awards have been conferred upon her. The Padma Bhushan, India's third highest civilian award, the South Indian Business Achievers Award, more recently, ZTV's Best Women Entrepreneur Award, Women in Healthcare, Women in Biotech, the Influential Women Award for Outstanding Contributions in Biotech, and many more. We're so honored to have her here today and to hear about her life and her wisdom and her advice to our global health enterprise at UW-Madison. Thank you, Mrs. Ella.
Thank you very much for that warm welcome. And I just thank UW-Madison and Global Health, the platform that we are all under, irrespective of which part of the world we come from. I think UW has been a great harbinger of unity and oneness to all of us. And I think global health is going to be, also headed out in that direction, leading the way and going forward into the future in terms of how we as countries, as societies, as individuals can come together and participate, collaborate, partner, share and learn our experiences in this very, very complex, yet, I think it's a great subject that we are all in. Health is something that's is extremely important to each one of us, and whether it's male or female, and irrespective of gender, irrespective of the country and the societies that we come from, and our own communities that we come from. So I think public health and health-related initiatives such as this have a very long, impact, a very strong impact in the societies that we come from and globally as well. With that few remarks, I would like to just open up my little presentation that I have, and I hope you're able to see it all. Can you see my slides there?
We cannot at the moment. Let me try on my end for you, Mrs. Ella.
Okay, please.
Oh. It looks like you are now all set with your slides.
Oh, okay, great.
So
I must have just got it up.
yes.
Like I said, I'm trying to work between 3 time zones. Sorry about that. I would like you all to take you all through a journey of how Krishna and I, when we relocated back to India in 1996, during that time frame, the transition happened for us after spending 14 years in the United States. And a majority of that time, I think more than 7 years, more than 50% of that time was in Madison, Wisconsin. And Krishna was at the Department of Plant Pathology and, in his graduate program. And I was, juggling between work and learning and raising my 2 little kids in Eagle Heights at Madison. But we had this little ability, or I would say, I don't know, what to call it, but sometimes it is a thing that we jump up sometimes, and it's a risk-taking factor that both of us shared in common. And one fine day, we decided that we would like to go back to India to explore initiatives in public health platforms, and that's how the idea came forth to set up a startup company for biotechnology related processes, especially in biotherapeutic molecules and for vaccines, because India was not at that point of time ready with some of the new generation technologies that we all understand and know about today. So this is how our journey began. In 1996, 98, both of us, first generation entrepreneurs, had no background in business whatsoever, except our training and our working experiences that both of us had. Went on to start, the first company was Bharat for human health, and then came along additional entities that manufacture vaccines and biotherapeutic molecules. There are 4 of them listed on the top. The second, later on moved on to also set up an animal biotech company, which primarily focuses on animal health, animal vaccines, especially to livestock and pet animals. That's also operating out of India in a city called Bangalore. And Krishna's pet peeve, of course, was the background that he comes from in agriculture. So we moved on to again set up companies that could look at working with farmers, with the food production, with the food chain, and the value addition processes that are required for the in order to enable better market and better access to the produce that comes out of that part of India. So that there came along those companies as well. The last but not the least is another area of expertise again, which is again closely tied to our realm of life sciences broadly, is the preclinical toxicology and testing laboratories that we have established in Hyderabad in India, which is also now close to about more than 20 years up in operations. And this is a Swiss GLP accredited facility that takes up preclinical toxicology testing in small animals for any kind of products or molecules or material that needs to be introduced as a commercial product from any part of the world. We have customers from across the world that we service. The last one, of course, there's one more down there, which I just would like to mention here, is that we also then went on to initiate an institution, a not-for-profit institution called the Ella Foundation, which primarily focuses on research, development, training, internships, learning, and also new research areas and initiatives that could be taken up. So there's any number of graduate students and master's level of students who enroll in the foundation. They pursue higher academic training in universities in India and abroad, and work from this institution in Hyderabad. So this is how we basically went on to establish ourselves over the last 25 years now. This has been our journey. And I would like to now focus on Bharat, because that is where the entire, the largest, biggest piece of the pie is in Bharat. So I move on to the slide number 4, where it is Bharat Biotech, which is how this started back in '96. Krishna and I were the primary founders. Both of us going back with very, very minimal funding and resources at that point of time, had angel investors from the United States, very thankful for their support, and also went on ahead to approach banks and institutions, financial institutions in India, to set up at that point of time a 12.5 it was a $3.5 million investment that had to be brought in for setting up a vaccine manufacturing facility. So that's how this journey began, rather small, but has now, of course, gone to up to an investment of more than $500 million in terms of investments and new projects and new facilities, manufacturing facilities that have come up ever since. Next slide. I would move on to slide number 5 to just show you the amount of work that we happen to continue to invest in terms of product development, our partnerships, the number of 5 billion doses of vaccines that we have produced so far, with a very broad pipeline of more than 19 vaccines and 4 biotherapeutic molecules, exports to about 125 countries, 4 WHO pre-qualified vaccines. When I say this, this is a prerequisite. It's a requirement in order to supply vaccines and other molecules to UNICEF and Gavi and other international procurement agencies. So they always look, would like to see that if the product is pre-qualified by the WHO, so that it is, another box that is ticked very easily, and then the product moves along for procurement. We have also ever since gone ahead to develop the world's first typhoid conjugate vaccine, which is administered to a child, an infant 6 months and above, from 6 months old to at least to the age of 60, to an adult in the age of to the age of 60 or 70. We have also gone ahead and developed a rotavirus vaccine for the first time from the developing world, and the first from India, and the third rotavirus vaccine for the entire world. And this again went on with a very, very large partnership, which I will touch upon later. So developing several new vaccines have been our forte, and this is how we've been taking our position in terms of being innovative and developing products, technologies, processes, creating intellectual property rights, patenting, of course, in order to enter markets, and also then developing them clinically, testing these products in both animals and human testing, going through stringent regulatory processes in India and the WHO and other parts of the world, manufacturing it in our facilities in India, which are now in more than 4 different states of the country, and finally having them all distributed in a cold chain, under cold chain, because all these vaccines and products that I'm talking about would either need a -20 cold chain up to a +8. So this would be the range of the cold chain that would be required for almost all these products that I'm mentioning here. Next slide, please. I've just enlisted here some of these vaccines which I just mentioned earlier, starting from a polio, from the monovalent and the bivalent polios, the Haemophilus influenzas, the DPTs, the Japanese encephalitis, which was again a game changer for us in India to have brought it up, the hepatitis B vaccine, the rotavirus vaccines, which were developed, the typhoid vaccines, more recently, the pandemic vaccines, the H1N1, when it struck us in 2009 or 10 during that time frame, and then the most current pandemic COVID-19 vaccines, which we have developed and introduced into the markets in India very successfully with all regulatory clearances and approvals, rabies vaccine and many other. So we have both the children and adult segments in terms of how these vaccines are given. Most of them are for children, but there are also the adult vaccines, which have also become very important as they are called travelers vaccines, and for some of these infectious diseases which we would have to be protected from. Next slide, please. I would also like to just share that so far we have produced more than 6 billion doses cumulative and have them distributed to all those green countries that you see. And of course, India is there in blue, just to give you a little bit of a span and in terms of how we connect with multiple continents and countries of the world. Next slide, please. I would also like to touch upon that we are one of the world's largest manufacturer of some of these vaccines that I have mentioned earlier, the typhoid vaccine, the rotavirus vaccine, which is primarily for children under the age of 2. It controls and prevents diarrheal deaths which happen across the developing world. Biopolio, which is the polio vaccine, and the rabies vaccine, which is the Cairo Rab. We are also now, and the Japanese encephalitis vaccines. All these vaccines have put us as one of the largest in that scale of being one of the largest manufacturers in the world. Chikungunya and Zika vaccines have been identified, have been characterized, and have been developed and are ready for any potential point of time to be further introduced as vaccines. We are getting ready to launch a cholera vaccine and the non-typable salmonella vaccine for certain continents of the world that requires for certain populations. And we are also at the cusp of starting to manufacture a malaria vaccine from India, which will also be then later on sent globally for endemic zones. Next one, please. Our clinical trials.
Excuse me, I want to say, first of all, how impressed I am with the scale of this. You know, we're mentioning billions and so many important diseases. And all of the speakers asked me to give them a 3-minute reminder when there's about 3 minutes left.
Thank you so much.
3 to 5 minutes. And thank you. And we will make the whole PowerPoint available to everyone as well.
Fantastic, fantastic. I will go through this in that time frame. Thank you so much. The clinical trials, of course, happen all over the world in many parts of the world. with multiple subjects, human volunteers, both infants and children. Infants, children, and adults for many of these products. So they comply to international regulatory norms and guidelines and standards and protocols. I'm moving on to the next slide, please. The impact so far has been in forms of developing polio, eradicating it completely, almost from India. We started in India in '98, so you can see now where we are as a population, that we have completely eradicated polio. And we are very extremely honored and privileged to have been a part of that journey of eradicating the polio disease from India, the disease burden from India. Moving on to the next slide. Again, this is the global impact of how polio is now changing. The fight against polio across the world, as you can see now, is completely to a point where it is just, very much related to a few countries in the world that have the incidents, and a majority of them have been protected from it. Next slide, please. Rotovac, again, is a great product that we developed with a very strong partnership, which was under the umbrella of the Indo-US Vaccine Action Program, under which both the countries, India and the United States, worked in bringing along this product development platform. The strain was isolated in India by a pediatrician at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, Dr. M.K. Ban. And then thereupon, the transfer was done because it was a public-private partnership, all of them being academic institutions. The interesting partner that came into that project was Bharat, and this happened in the year 2000. So you can imagine how challenging and it was for us as a young company to get onto a project of this magnitude with more than, I believe 15 or 18 partnering institutions from across the world. Took us 15 years to develop a phenomenal vaccine, the third vaccine for the world, and the first vaccine from India for rotavirus. Next slide, please. Today, rotavirus is available, the vaccine is available in the drops, in the form of 5 drops. This is how it is administered orally to the infants. Across the world, we supply it to many countries under the UNICEF procurement and Gavi procurements. And this vaccine has now really made a great impact in terms of how it has also been utilized, because it is the vaccine costs $1 a dose. By far, this is the cheapest vaccine that is available for public health from any part of the world. And this is now supplied to all the public procuring agencies at the cost of $1 a dose. Next slide, please. I'm moving on to the next slide, so that just to let you know, this is what it is about how rotavirus afflicts most of us globally. And I'm moving to the next slide, where again, there are many countries which are now switching on to the use of rotavirus because of its easy administration. It is an oral administration of 5 drops, and the cold chain has been reduced from a -20 to a 20-8. So this is how we have also saved on how we can help and minimize the medical waste and all the other medical waste and the transportation and the logistics in terms of sending it as a liquid vaccine, and then later on converting it into into an oral drops. So next slide, please. Rotovac, again, I've covered all this. We'll move on to the next one, please.
And 1 more minute, please.
Yes. The rotavirus vaccine development, as I had mentioned earlier, I had the partnerships from the National Institute of Health, from the CDC, Atlanta, the Government of India, the Department of Biotechnology, the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, the Stanford University, and several organizations. PATH, of course, Johns Hopkins, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation did a great, brought in great support by funding almost the entire project. And Bharat, of course, was the manufacturing and the development partner in this initiative. And next slide, please. The typhoid vaccine, again, is the first of its kind in the world. And we have demonstrated that it has the best immune response system that it has created. And it's a conjugate vaccine which has been developed, and it was also pre-qualified by the WHO and is available in India and other parts of the world. Next, please. These are some of the countries where the effectiveness trials were all done. I'm moving on again quickly so that I would like to cover. I'm moving on. All these countries were covered for many of our clinical trials and research. The COVID vaccine was developed after COVID struck us in 2020. Covaxin came into existence in the year 2021, January, when we developed it under extreme circumstances. As we all know, when the pandemic hit us, we did a very different approach in terms of bringing the strains. The live COVID strains were brought in from a National Institute of Virology, transported physically in our personal vehicles, because the logistics was all shut down. India was under a lockdown 1.0. So this was transported by road. The strains entered our BSL-3 contamination facilities, under which the vaccine was developed in about a 45-day time frame, and then later on put on to animal testing and human clinical testing. Under 9 months, the entire product development was completed with more than 27,000 human volunteers, which was the largest subjects enrolled for any trial for a molecule from India. So Covaxin has put not only Bharat on a global platform, but has also put the country, India, on the global top 5 countries in the world to have developed and manufactured its own COVID-19 vaccine. So that is Covaxin for us. I just would like to add on one last point in terms of the nasal vaccine, which was also later on taken up by us. We were working on 4 different candidates, vaccine candidates, and we wanted to make this as a very easy vaccine to administer. So instead of being an injectable, we made it in the form of a nasal drop vaccine. So this is now 4 drops in each nostril on either side of the nose. And this is very much now under production in India, and it is being licensed in India. It is going to be also used up now when we are having some of these variants come around us. So because we are still in an endemic condition for the COVID, for the pandemic scenario right now. So this is proving to be very effective in terms of helping the populations to take care of themselves, and also to protect themselves from any of the new variants, especially those who are elderly, those who are immunocompromised, and those of them who have other health conditions and parameters. So I just want to leave you with the thoughts that Bharat is a very young, innovative, forward-looking biotech company that is based out of India, but we certainly look up to the entire globe as our platform to bring about new technologies, new interventions, more importantly, keeping them on par with global standards, and of course, being regulated with the best standards and guidelines that we need to adhere, and making them affordable, because that is very important. The last line that I would like to say is that we need to understand that global health and comes when we can make the countries, the 100, 150 other countries that are out there that cannot afford expensive vaccines and molecules, but we need to ensure that we have them very affordable and have accessibility to all of them. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the world is one family, is what we believe in India. And I leave you all with that thought. And thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You really took us around the world and back again, because I'm sitting here about 3 blocks from the Eagle Heights playground where you mentioned raising your children and cooking up this idea, and you took us around the world and treated billions of people, and the world really is one family. I'm going to invite Jessica to begin sharing her slides while I read her introduction. She'll be next. Dr. Jessica Price serves as the Sustainability and Resilience Manager for Madison, Wisconsin. In this role, Jessica is tasked with leading the city's climate, sustainability, and resilience work. Jessica has also worked as the New York Renewable Energy Strategy Lead for the Nature Conservancy, and in that role, she worked on issues related to renewable energy, climate adaptation, equity and sustainability, and community engagement. A former science writer in Chicago, she received master's and doctoral degrees from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and we're very lucky to have her here serving our city and more. So welcome, Jessica.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lori. And thank you, Mrs. Ella. That's a tough act to follow. Thank you for sharing about all of your work. Just as a quick check, you can see my presentation view, the slide view, and not my presentation view, correct?
Right now, Jessica, this is Katie from GHI. We do not see your screen at the moment.
Oh, okay. Let me try that again.
Not to worry.
How's that?
That is wonderful. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Yeah, so thanks everyone for joining, and thank you for having me. I'm really excited to share with you today a little bit about myself and about the work that I do here at the City of Madison. Again, I'm Jessica Price. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the Sustainability and Resilience Manager in the Mayor's office here at the city. Just to give you a little bit of timeline, Lori encouraged us to introduce ourselves and provide a little bit of background information. And so just kind of starting you all off, I know that we have folks at all stages of their education and career on today. So maybe you kind of see some things that we have in common, perhaps. And so I started as a first generation college student at a small liberal arts school in Illinois at Lake Forest College. I was going to get the most out of my scholarship dollars, and so I double majored in biology and art history. I wrapped that up and then became a science writer at the University of Chicago in the Department of Chemistry for about 2 years. That was really fantastic experience because having gone to a small liberal arts college, I didn't really know yet, and I hadn't been exposed much to folks that were in graduate school seeking graduate degrees. And so that gave me some time to get to know higher education a little bit more deeply, work with graduate students, work at an RO1 university, and really hone in on some of the science skills that I really enjoyed. And then I came to the University of Wisconsin in Madison. I'm a double graduate of the Nelson Institute for Environmental Studies. And so I got my master's in conservation biology and sustainable development, and then went on to get my PhD in environment and resources. And then I joined the Nature Conservancy, which was a really fantastic experience. I was there for nearly 6 years. Working on I was the renewable energy strategy lead, which meant that I also worked on climate mitigation and adaptation. So I worked on flood resilience as well. The publications you see at the bottom are some examples of the larger bodies of work that I worked on while I was there. And a through line between this work and the work that I do now is really working together with partners to bring together stakeholder collaboration and input with some additional information from, spatial analysis, other kinds of research to make sure that we're coming up with solutions and tools that work for communities and that are supported by the folks that are directly impacted by those decisions. And so the Long Island Solar Roadmap was all about finding low impact sites to build solar, create a larger solar build out on Long Island and communities. So that's rooftops, ground mounted sites that are previously deserved parking lots, and really kind of creating a win-win for renewable energy and land conservation. As well as the toolkit for supporting wind and solar projects. And so this is the kind of answer, the yes in my backyard toolkit answer for renewable energy deployment, and giving folks the tools and resources and information they need to participate in the public processes for large scale renewable siting in New York State. And so then I moved on and I came back to Madison. I'm a boomerang Madisonian, really excited to be back in the city. And I'll focus a little bit, my work really focuses on helping Madison achieve our climate and energy goals. So the city of Madison has made this commitment to reaching 100% renewable energy and net zero carbon emissions for city operations by 2030 and then community-wide by 2050. And we want to do this by advancing climate equity. So we really want to make sure that everyone in our community has access and opportunity to benefit from climate solutions. So really understanding that there are ways that we're going to grow our green economy and that we're going to decarbonize that provide jobs and economic opportunities and that can lower cost burdens and health disparities. And so we really want to make sure that everybody is we're creating those benefits for everyone. And then also alleviating those burdens so that folks aren't, some folks in our community are not bearing an unequal burden to the impacts of climate change. And the chart on the right just really talks about where our emissions are coming from. And so you'll see in my slides that we have a lot of strategies focused on these three biggies on transportation, and then our residential and commercial buildings as our major sources of greenhouse gas emissions. And one of the lenses that we always think about, and I know was a topic of a previous presentation that you all had, was climate migration. Really understanding that climate change is already a major driver of global migration. And here in the United States, this is just showing the impacts of sea level rise alone on population changes just in the United States. And so you can see that Madison is going to be perhaps a receiving area. We've already been identified through several popular media outlets as kind of a climate haven. That's not to say that we will not be experiencing the impacts of climate change, but we are a place of relative security that folks might choose to move to. And so one of the questions that we have and that we think about in all of our work is, how do we become a welcoming city for our new friends and neighbors that are going to be here for lots of different reasons, and sometimes not reasons that they got to choose. And so we're already one of the fastest growing, or the fastest growing city in Wisconsin, and we face a growing need for affordable housing. But affordable housing and resilience and climate resilience are very connected. The location and design and construction of housing and transportation, I would add, affect both affordability and climate compatibility in our area. And so our work is really guided, a lot of my work is really guided by Mayor Satya Rhodes Conway's, three mayoral agendas, which are housing forward, metro forward, and climate forward. I like to argue that all three of these agendas are climate agendas. They're really responding to and helping us be adaptable in a changing climate. And so I'm not going to delve too deeply into each of these agendas, but just giving you the highlights that what each of them is about. And so housing forward is really increasing housing choice and affordability while combating displacement and segregation, ensuring that folks can stay in their homes, can afford homes, and we're working to end homelessness. The Metro Forward agenda is all about investing in our public transit system. And so making sure that we're providing convenient and affordable public transit so that everyone in our community can get around if they choose without a car. So and we're going to be, one of our big sort of showpieces is implementing our bus rapid transit system. So our bus rapid transit system is already broken ground and should go into operation in 2024. And that bus rapid transit system, I should note, and I think I have on a later slide, is going to be all electric buses. And so that's a really big advancement for our climate work. And then finally, our climate forward agenda focuses on continuing to lead by example as a city for decarbonization. So you notice that our goal for 2030 is faster than the community-wide goal. And so that gives us opportunities to pilot projects and to sort of do proof of concept, as well as show what is possible. We're focusing on our building stock, low and no carbon transportation, and then growing our green economy. So just to highlight a few of our climate-focused policies and programs around clean transportation recently, this is only going back to 2021, so kind of when I started at the city. And I had a small part to play in some of these and a larger part in others. But in 2021, we passed an ordinance that requires EV charging in most new buildings. We're transitioning our fleet to low and no carbon vehicles. And so most of the vehicles that we purchase for transportation of our employees are now low carbon or no carbon vehicles. And then, of course, our bus rapid transit will launch in 2024. We're also creating some projects around climate adaptation and really understanding, mapping urban heat island and figuring out strategies that we can take to mitigate the urban heat island that we already experience, and then to incorporate considerations for urban heat island into our city planning and projects. We also have a new project funded by EPA to advance air quality monitoring and address health disparities in our community. And then we have a lot of projects around housing availability and energy efficiency. And so 2022, we passed an ordinance to enable accessory dwelling units. And then in 2023, a second ordinance provides a height bonus for affordable units in new apartment buildings. We have the Efficiency Navigator program, which we operate with community-based organizations, Sustain Dane and Elevate Energy, to provide free energy saving upgrades to multifamily housing. That is, if you know folks that might be interested in that, you can sign up for our second round that we're accepting applications that, for a second year. And then finally, just this year, we passed an ordinance that requires large commercial buildings to measure their energy use and to tune up their buildings' major energy using systems to reduce energy waste and carbon emissions. And so finally, I just wanted to share some, Lori asked, what can institutions be doing? How can we be supporting women leaders? And so three things really came to mind for me, and there's, I'm sure, many answers to this question, but one of the things that I find really important is mentorship. Mentors matter. Having folks that are on your side, that are there to elevate you, help you achieve your goals, provide good advice to you is really, really important. I think you're never too old to have a mentor. So if you don't have a mentor, find one. Your mentor can be a person at an earlier career stage than you. That's okay. There's this idea of kind of the elder being the mentor. Yeah, thank you, Lori. There's this idea that the elders are the mentors and the young people are the ones that are soaking up that great advice. And that's absolutely true. They can also go in the other direction. And so find a mentor, be a mentor. I think stakeholder engagement and partnership are really underutilized and undervalued. There are folks that do this professionally that are really, really good at the science of engaging and the science of partnership, the science of facilitation, and the art of all of these things as well. And I think it gets undervalued and underutilized in projects. And I think we kind of suffer for it and not being great partners. And then the last one is, I think to advance women leaders, we really need to teach and practice following. I think there are academic courses, there are books about it, there are so many ways that we're trying to teach every single person to be a leader. And leadership is very important. But I think even those of us that are leading can practice good following, can practice good partnership. And we need to make sure that folks are more comfortable with following women leaders. And so I'll just leave it there. I think those are some of the things that I think we could be moving forward faster on women leadership. So if anyone needs to get a hold of me, I'm at jprice2@cityofmadison.com. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Dr. Price. And I'm so mindful of the ways in which I think that's a big message for GHI. Many of us have been involved in the GHI enterprise for 20 years, and it's time for us to work harder than ever and have the next generation lead us at the same time. So that is intense following, I should say, being there for young leaders. So thank you for that. I'm going to turn now to another of our leaders. Dr. Zewdie is a sustainability organizational psychologist at the Alamo Navajo Health Center. As a psychology student at UW-Madison, Selam was an undergraduate research scholar and a McNair scholar. She went on to study industrial and organizational psychology for her master's degree and interned as a leadership researcher at Korn Ferry International, developing leadership psychometric assessments. And following that, she came back to Madison to study sustainability as it applies to organizational psychology for her doctorate at the Nelson Institute for Environmental Studies. So Dr. Selam, thank you so much for being here, and please begin.
Thank you, Lori, and thank you for the Global Health Institute for organizing this. This has been so informative. I was taking notes, but I will start my presentation now. Can everybody see my slides? Okay, wonderful.
We can't. I'm so sorry, Selam. Is there any way to put it in presentation mode?
Sure. How about now?
Perfect. Thank you so much.
And no problem. Thanks for that feedback, Katie. Okay, so I'll just get started and then hopefully we'll have questions if you have any in the end. So my name is, as Lori said, Selamawit Zewdie. I'm a sustainability organizational psychologist. And in my work, I really use the practitioner researcher model, and I focus on finding solutions that enhance people's well-being while protecting the environment. So really looking at our work in a nested fashion that build up on each other and create a positive feedback loop. So as a practitioner, I use, sorry, let me move this out the way. As a practitioner, I use whole systems thinking to build integrated and flourishing programs for an organization, the people that work in that organization, and the community that the organization serves. So this cyclical pattern is something that you see in my work, and something that, as you saw in Jessica's and Mrs. Ella's work, that you notice in sustainability, we have to, if we're truly trying to provide a sustainable livelihood for everybody, we have to start considering these loops and accounting for them. So today I'm going to share with you some of my work as a practitioner, and then I'll end by sharing some of my specific work that relates to our talk about women entrepreneurs to close it off as a researcher. So as a practitioner, one of the things that I have done in recent years is help develop an off-grid solar business that offers clean and affordable electricity to communities in Africa through a decentralized and local entrepreneurship program. So this initiative not only replaces harmful kerosenes or lamps, but it also protects the environment and health outcomes of the individuals in those communities, while also building the local economy of the community that is being served. So this business model is being implemented in the Republic of Congo currently. And in 2008, the business model won the Wisconsin governor's business plan. Currently, I am collaborating with a team to create a sustainable workforce for a Native American community in New Mexico. So our aim is to fulfill the employment needs of a Gold LEED certified health center. So our focus in this project is really making sure that the locals in the community, which obviously historically and currently are oftentimes marginalized and ignored, are being accounted for, that their skill sets are being accounted for, and we're also providing necessary training so that they are the ones who are taking these employments. And obviously, when somebody's employed, it's not only about the person, it also helps the whole family. And this is especially important in rural areas and areas that are off the grid, such as a Native American reservation in Alamo that I work at currently. So what ties my work as a practitioner and a researcher really is best illustrated in the ethos of Ella Watson, an Aboriginal educator and activist, when she said, "If you have come here to help me, you are wasting your time. If you have come here because your liberation is bound with mine, then let's work together." That's really the framework that I take my work in. So the work that I'm doing when it was in the solar project in Africa, that was it. And the same thing in the Native American community. But specifically taking on this message of we are all interconnected. How can our work advance one another, but do it in a way that also protects and serves the environment and our future generation? And that's really where my research kind of focuses on. So what the cornerstone, what even brought me into the sustainability field from organizational psychology specifically, was when I found out that if everyone in the world is to live the way Americans do, so those of us who are, I imagine, mostly on this call, it would take 5 Earths to sustain the planet. So that is just preposterous to me, because I grew up in Ethiopia. Ethiopia is a country that is developing, and like many other countries throughout the world. So the reality of this fact kind of was jarring to me, which led me to come back and study my PhD program. How can we create a sustainable, a regenerative world that serves all of us? And the big part of this is not letting go of indigenous teachings that have actually sustained us. So the question of my research project is, with roughly half of the world's population living in extreme poverty, that's the fact of our reality currently. If the economic principles that largely pulled industrial nations out of poverty cannot and should not be expanded due to their adverse impact, the economic principles, meaning profit first principles, so the ones that have that govern our capitalist system right now, how then can economically marginalized communities and nations gain agency and access to prosperity and mobility? So this is something as simple as, how do you get a clean electricity instead of using kerosene or wood that impacts your livelihood and the environment, to put it in context. So one of the pioneers of this area that I found that were working to answer this question is sustainable business entrepreneurs. So these sustainable business entrepreneurs create innovative initiatives. They reconstruct social institutions and mobilize resources to establish legitimate, and that's the part, this legitimate alternative approaches to businesses that are profitable, have positive social impact, and protect the environment. So it really has like that nested picture that we want. So a lot of times I use the term sustainably abundant. How is it that you could have then your needs met with everybody else also having their needs met, so being sustainably abundant? So there's a lot of research that shows that these researchers and pioneers are really the ones that are leading forward. But something that I noticed in the research was that women sustainable entrepreneurs were missing from this. So although the importance of sustainable entrepreneurs has been firmly established, that there was not enough research conducted on women sustainable entrepreneurs, and that's what I set out to do. So I selected 5 women entrepreneurs who have been recognized by local and national authorities in their respective fields. These entrepreneurs covered 2 continents, so Africa and the United States, 5 countries, and 5 different industries. And I studied to see how were they able to be successful. So some of them, and this is a picture of the different entrepreneurs and organizations that I looked at. So you see a range of different fields. And I know we're sort of short on time, so I welcome any questions at the end. But so that we have a off-grid solar system, a sustainable shoe company, a recycling company, an entrepreneurship hub, and a reusable and sustainable sanitary pad. So those were the different scopes. And so I looked to see what are their success factors that I could glean from all 3 or all 5 of them. And these were it. So 1, the leaders were visionary, meaning that they were able to think outside of their social context and not only say this doesn't work, but also say there is a better way. I don't know what it is, but I'm going to figure it out. And they all did in their context. locality. Locality is very important because, as I mentioned before, it's not about just the local area. They looked at their indigenous teachings. What did our ancestors do in our region to address these areas? And then I'll tie it back with technology, and they use technology to accelerate that, to meet that need. So they bridge the gap. They created collaborative internal teams, so everybody in their team felt like they were stakeholders in the company. They felt like that was also them. They created symbiotic external partnerships. So it was really beautiful. When Mrs. Ella was talking, I could see these success factors in her presentations coming, and I'm like, beautiful. And technology, and I imagine technology will be more prominent moving forward with the acceleration of what we can now do. So they use technology not only to be innovative, but they also use technology to create those partnerships with one another and external sources. So those are the five success types. So obviously, these success prototypes are not static; they are ongoing, and they often develop on top of one another. And it's a learning loop. So it's a continuous improvement. So it's not like you don't have these and then you're done, because obviously things change, and it's a continuous process. And in conclusion, those who want to see sustainable entrepreneurship advance, they should focus on creating systems that are governed by shared meaning, where everybody feels valued and heard and seen within the organization, and shared purpose across the organization. So where do we connect? What are our common grounds? And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zewdie. This has been a wonderful trip around the world. We've been local, we've been global, and we've got some pointers on how to do the wonderful big things that you've done. I really wish, I hope you'll all come back. If we were at our Global Health Symposium, we can invite you to share music and food and celebrate. And so I hope we'll be able to be in person sometime. And this is just the beginning of being part of the global health community. And I'd love to see you in our classes. And I want to thank everyone who's here. There's some folks in the audience, some of our new fellows are here, as well as some of our longtime supporters. So thanks for being part of the conversation, everyone. And please put some comments in the chat for our speakers if you didn't have a chance to ask a question. And we'll see you next time at the next Global Health webinar.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you, everyone. Wonderful, wonderful talks. So I want to wish you all well, and thank you so much for joining us, and thanks everyone for participating in the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.